outgoing administration of President Muhammadu Buhari will be handing over on May the 31st a total debt portfolio of about $103 billion. That's roughly 50 trillion naira, the highest in the country's 62 years history. So what will this huge debt burden mean for the incoming president-elect, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as well as the 36 states of the Federation and his team? I'm chatting to this and a few other questions around it with a policy analyst and senior economist at SPM Professionals, Paul Alaje. Thanks for coming through tonight live into the studios. We've got a whole lot of issues to deal with as a country. But again, when you put them, folks talk about electricity, water, roads, and insecurity and all of that. At the top of it, for me, is the issue of debt. So I just go quickly, piggyback a bit back to 2003, 2005, when the Obasanjo's administration came in, and we're just talking about $18 billion of Paris Club debt. $18 billion about 20-something years ago. And today we're talking about $103 billion, and we're not done yet. What's your take?
Well, I have a lot of worries, I have a lot of concerns, because even the figure declared is not the money we are owing as of today. As of today, when you had Ways and Means that the Debt Management Office had written National Assembly to consider, we're speaking of over 75 trillion naira. When you convert that in the dollars, you know we have even more things to deal with. Debt is not really the concern. The real concern is how do you service it? What is the cost of debt? Because the cost of debt is directly opposite of what is happening.
And I'm going to go straight and disagree with you. Because debt is always an issue.
Yes, that's where I'm going. When I say the debt, just mentioning the word debt is not the issue. It's the cost of debt. That is, even if you say you will pay back in 10 years and 15 years' time, how do you service it with the limited revenue today? Which is a big issue you have now in the short term compared to the headache you will have in the long term. So debt, although people see it as a big issue, which whether or not it is, but the biggest issue that comes with that is the cost of service. So when you look at Ways and Means, it is NPR plus 3. The last NPR increased NPR by, I think, 50 basis points. When you have 3%, you know that we are saying in the next 3 years, we are looking at over 5 trillion added to what we have already from Ways and Means. So when you have that, which of course the National Assembly has not approved, but government has already collected and there's nothing we can do about it, we know we have a big issue in our hand as a country and a big burden for the next coming president-elect.
That's the issue with whether any idea of how the incoming administration should deal with this major problem, $103 billion and counting.
Well, I think the next president, we need to start conversation with whosoever we are owing. There are some conversations that will be very tough, I must warn, because we are owing commercial debt. They are not institutional debt like what we have under President Obasanjo, where we have IMF and World Bank and you Paris Club, I beg your pardon, you can start talking to them. But how do I talk to people, that individual organization, individual person that bought into bonds? It's going to be very difficult. And when you look at the local component of people that have lent to government through the central bank in the name of buying a year or 2 years or 5 years bond, it's really going to be a tough conversation, apart from those that we are even owing that are outside Nigeria.
The type of conversation that Ghana had earlier this year in terms of local debt restructuring, and that's hurting a number of banks, including some Nigerian banks that have exposure to Ghana. The likes of Zenith Bank, the likes of GT Bank. They're taking hundreds of billions of naira right now in the heat because of what's happening next door.
So if government is looking at that, the real solution to this is revenue. If you can boost revenue significantly, and I must also warn, you cannot say you want to generate revenue to withdraw effect. When it gets to a point where businesses are suffering and people are suffering, then you throw more people into poverty, which is not the goal of government. But what should we do? You need to look at the books released by National Bureau of Statistics on the economic performance on quarterly basis and look at which sector of the economy is growing. Are they paying revenue to government in the right proportion? I can tell you about 3 or 4 of them, but I will not want to mention the particular sector so that there is no creation of fear in those sectors on this program. But I can tell you about 3 or 4 of them that are paying lower than 20% of what should go to the covers of government. But when you check the National Bureau of Statistics, even during COVID, this sector continued to grow. In fact, one grew by over 7% during COVID. And after COVID, the nature of human and the way we live has completely changed. This sector continue to make more revenue, but I'm afraid, how will our government even understand? And that is why it's important that the next team that will run the economy must understand not just how traditional economy works, but the modern economy, how it works. Because most countries of the world, when you look at what they do, the way we do business is different. The way we are doing business is completely different from the way some of the countries that have gotten economic prosperity and have been able to get this economy to a large extent.
When I listen to other political economic leaders in other climes, the word revenue is hardly mentioned. They mention the word economy. Now, what's this fixation about revenue in Nigeria? Yes, we're everybody's just going to generate revenue. But again, revenue sounds more like we're still going to run this country more from the public sector, government side of things, rather than allowing the private sector to lead it. The private sector leads the economy. The government looks at generating revenue through customs, FIRS, NIMASA, airports, whatever.
Let me give you an example with one of the countries that leads in terms of economy. The size of the economy is almost the size of Nigeria's economy, but the population of Nigeria is over 200 million. Their population is barely 10 million. So everybody in the country is wealthy, not because they generate more in GDP than us, but because they were able to control their population to be less than 5% of our population.
Control population or do wealth creation in the way the economy runs.
So this is what they've done. They've created wealth for that limited population. For instance, if you want to start any business, it starts with business registration. This country has so perfected it that business registration is not managed by government officials. It is managed by business people, and they are given targets regarding business you want to register. So per registration of business, private sector has certain interests and knows that you cannot come register business you are not going to use. So
civil servants are not the one doing business registration for a businessman.
Yes. It's not civil servant, it is purely private sector driven. So there is certain amount that is generated and it's based on target. So before you wake up and before you stand up and say you want to go register business, you had better mean what you want to do. Business failure rates reduce significantly because it comes with a fee. If you take what they generate in a population of 10 million compared to what we generate in a population of over 200 million, if you convert using exchange rate of official rate, they are making over 1.5 trillion naira in revenue to government. Even though it's private sector, the share of revenue that goes to government is over 1.5 trillion. How will such economy not be wealthy? How will people not be wealthy? And government is deploying such money back into infrastructure, human capital development, and so on and so forth. That is why such economy understand how economy runs. It is not just by having papers and having so much number. It's in the quality of businesses they have, and it's in the strength of businesses that the economy is growing. And that is why innovation for me, when we say business innovation, is not just for us to have skyscrapers like the rest of the world. Even had the kind of businesses we have, are they strong? Are they empowered? If we want to have small businesses, it's understandable. We must provide support for small businesses. But when it comes to medium scale and large scale businesses we have, what kind of structure do we have to run these businesses?